Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, October 20th, 2025. I am Dave Biddle flying solo on today's show. Dan Rubin is on his way back from seeing his son play basketball at NYU. Dan will be with me on Wednesday's show. He'll also be with you guys tomorrow talking recruiting. I'm guessing with the Poobah and Garrick, but definitely will be Dan talking recruiting with some guests. Welcome to the show. We're going to talk about some of the things we now know about this Ohio State team, or things we continue to learn about this Ohio State team as they go into their second and final bye week of the season. You guys like bye week, off week, idle week, whatever your vernacular is. I kind of like idle week. Bye week just kind of is just kind of like the go-to term. So I'm going to get into my personal power rankings for the Big Ten, 1 through 18. There's no ties. It's 1 through 18, and you guys can tell me where I'm wrong. So I'm sure we'll disagree on some of them. I don't think we're going to disagree on the top 3 or 4. I think that's pretty set in stone. It's certainly the top 3. But let's start with Ohio State. So Julian Sayin, we talked about it at the postgame show. He puts the ball like you couldn't hand it any better to his receivers, like 40 yards down the field. These are tough throws he's making. I lost count of how many times I'm like, well, that was an NFL throw. That was an NFL throw. And like high-level NFL throws, not like Jake Browning NFL throws. So damn impressive. And you look at, obviously, the most important thing for Julian Sayin is to lead this team where it needs to go. The team goals are by far the most important thing. But wouldn't it be cool to win a Heisman along the way? And like we were talking about this during the pregame show that I do for 97.1 The Fan on Saturday. We were like, Julian Sayin's Heisman odds are not, high enough or low enough or whatever you want to say. He was too far down the list. He was clearly like in the back of tier 2, so to speak. He had tier 1, which by Saturday morning, actually, Carson Beck was no longer in that. But like heading into, let's say Friday morning, Carson Beck was the favorite to win the Heisman. So you had like Carson Beck, Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson, and maybe somebody else was kind of in tier 1, so to speak, to win the Heisman, looking at the odds, with Carson Beck the betting favorite. And then he had some other guys, and kind of at the back of tier 2 was Julian Sayin, tied with Jeremiah Smith. They were both 14-1 odds to win the Heisman, 14-1 odds. So after one game, Julian Sayin shot up to 4-1 odds. Even if you don't know anything about sports gambling or you don't care, just trust me, that is a massive jump for one game. You go from 14-1 odds to 4-1 odds, and now he's in that top tier along with just 2 other guys, the aforementioned Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson. They're all bunched up there. Julian has the third worst odds of the 3, but barely. It's like 350, 360, and then Julian's 400, 4-1. So plus 350 for Mendoza, plus 360 for Simpson, and plus 400 for Sayin. And then there's a big jump to number 4. That's what I'm saying. That's where a tier 2 would start. So Sayin went from the back of tier 2 to the front of tier 1. You don't have to worry about him splitting votes with Jeremiah Smith anymore. I mean, not that JJ couldn't get back into it, but especially with Carnell Tate doing what he's doing, I don't see really a path for Jeremiah Smith to win the Heisman, because even if he does have a couple of just monster games, those stats are going to go to Julian Sayin as well, and Julian's already ahead of him. So we're picking against Buckeyes here, but it'd be pretty cool. 19 years after Ohio State last won a Heisman, that a quarterback wearing the number 10 also wins the Heisman. A little shout out to Troy Smith there, and that'd be pretty cool. 19 years later, another number 10 for the Buckeyes wins the Heisman. But seriously, the best thing about, I did want to mention the Heisman stuff because I think it's cool. But certainly the most important thing, like I said, is him doing what he needs to do to get this team where it needs to be. Speaking of that, they need to mentally prepare November 29th in Ann Arbor. They need to mentally prepare and physically prepare, that it's going to be just a nasty weather game. Sleet, snow, rain, wind, just anything you can think of, mud, whatever. Plan for the worst. And I'm sure they are. But just assume you're going to need to go in there. You're not going to be able to throw the ball around the lot. You're going to need to run the ball. And, I'm confident this defense, no matter what happens, rain or shine, that this defense is going to just, it's the best defense in the country, bar none. I don't even think there's a close second. And so I'm confident no matter what this defense, but this offense needs to make sure that they can win the game running the ball. And right now, I mean, against Wisconsin, they were just like, okay, you guys can't stop our passing game at all. We're not even going to really worry about it. But the right side of the offensive line specifically, to me, needs to get a lot better. And I think when I say a lot better, I mean, Phillip Daniels, I think overall has been really good this year. He had one bad game. He did not play well against Wisconsin. And then you had Tegra not playing well either. I thought Padilla, when he went in there, played pretty well. But they've got to get that cleaned up. You can't have games like that where, you're just flat out missing blocks or you have pre-snap penalties, missing assignments, whatever it might be. And there's a reason, as you guys know, 4 of the starting offensive linemen do not get rotated out of the game when the game's on the line. 1 does. And it's been every game now for a while, and that's Tegra. And, it was Onionwa coming in for him for, the first few games. Now it's been Padilla for the last month or so. And I think Padilla eventually is going to win that starting job. It just seems to be trending in that direction. We talked about that a little bit on the postgame show as well. It just feels like it's trending in that direction when you think about, well, they haven't been happy with Tegra all year. They wouldn't be rotating him out. He's the only. It's not like other guys are rotating out. He's the only one. And then Onionwa, they were like, well, he's not better than Tegra. And then Padilla gets his chance, and he's been playing well. So I don't know. I'm not privy to, I'm not in the film room with Tyler Bowen, but I wouldn't be surprised if Padilla is grading out higher. Now, it's a smaller sample size, though. Tegra's playing a lot more snaps. Tegra's a lot more, experienced than Padilla. And Padilla, has had I shouldn't say most of his practice reps. We're not out there for practice other than the first 3 days of camp. But from what I understood, the times we have been out there, Padilla mostly reps at center as the backup center. He also has been repping at guard since last year. That's not like that's anything new. But his main backup position was supposed to be backup center. And now he's backup right guard, maybe starting right guard before too long. And he's a third-year sophomore. He's a former outstanding high school wrestler. Finished as the runner-up as a junior. Heavyweight wrestler, finished as the runner-up, state runner-up by 1 point as a junior. And then didn't get to come back as a senior. He could have if he wanted to. But he enrolled early. He knew football was going to be his thing, so he enrolled early at Ohio State and didn't get to, participate in the state wrestling tournament his senior year at Wayne, or he might have made up for that. That's got to be interesting. I mean, you got to be proud that you were the second best heavyweight wrestler in the state, but you lose by 1 point. It's got to stick with you a little bit. But at least he was a junior. He can always say, I would have won it as a senior. But regardless, I love my football players that are former really good wrestlers, especially linemen. And there's just such a history of the way that the balance, the hand-to-hand combat, just using your hands in general, just everything that goes with wrestling translates well to being a football lineman. I've always said, if you're a football coach, I would, and your players are not your high school football coach, and your players are not playing, you have a player that's not playing a winter sport, have him wrestle. Even if he gets his butt kicked, it'll help him. He'll even gets his butt kicked in practice, matches, whatever. Just wrestling in practice will help him against good wrestlers. It will help him on the gridiron a lot. So I would say that. I think a lot of high school football coaches know that. But any young high school football coaches coming up, man, have your guys wrestle. It will help them. Not just linemen. Peyton Pierce was a great wrestler too. It doesn't have to be lineman. It can help any football player. So they've got to get that cleaned up on the right side. All right, on the offensive line. All right, another thing before we go to my Big Ten Power Rankings. I'm going to reveal my Big Ten Power Rankings 1 through 18. Before we do that, are we pretty much convinced that we know who RB2 is? And it's another true freshman, that being Isaiah West. I think if it's not official, this feels like when Bo Jackson, we were talking about, okay, he's going to be the starter before long, and then boom, at Washington, the window dressing was over. It wasn't like he gets more carries than everybody. He's the closer. No, he started the game at Washington, and he started ever since. Isaiah West, not only did he get 9 carries and look good doing it, he led the team in rushing over 60 yards. He had he had 9 carries, and then C.J. Donaldson and James Peoples combined had 2, both to Donaldson. Peoples did have a reception. So those are supposed to be the 2 main guys. We now know Bo Jackson's the starter. And by the way, Bo's rushing stats don't look good, but my gosh, the receiving game out of the backfield for him was basically an extension of the running game, and he looked great. 5 receptions for 57 yards, and as always, making the first man miss, getting more than maybe it looks like he will. I don't look at Bo Jackson's rushing stats, 10 for 26 yards. I'm not down on him at all, but I am high on Isaiah West. I think he's clearly RB2. Whether he's the second guy in the game against Penn State here after the idle week, I don't know, but I won't be surprised if he is. But it's clear to me that they think he's the second best back right now for him to get that many carries. And it wasn't just in garbage time. And they even said coming into the week that he's been coming on. We've seen it in previous games, but he just, much like Bo Jackson, there's times where it looks like, oh, he's not going to get anything there, and he gets like 7 or 8 yards. That's huge. That's absolutely huge when it looks like you're going to get 2 and you get 7 or 8. That's massive. And number 32 has that. So, yeah, I think, when you say it out loud, it's not ideal to have 2 true freshmen as your top 2 tailbacks. But first of all, those guys are really good. Second of all, running back's one of those positions where freshmen can come right in and play. There's certain positions where it's really tough to do that. And listen, I think they're still going to need Donaldson and Peoples. They still have those guys for depth, which is big. But there's just no doubt 25 and 32 are RB 1 and 2. There's just no doubt about it. And I think the coaches know this. And, Carnell Tate is really good at football. I think we should talk about that. I purposely say that kind of on, playing it down because he does. He just gets overlooked because of Jeremiah Smith, including by all of us. We all know Carnell's great. I've been saying all along, I think Carnell's great. He reminds me so much of T. Higgins. So much of T. Higgins. Just the way they catch the ball. That ball, Julian Sand did a great job. And Julian did a great job in the pocket in this game, too. Just moving. He just did a great job. A couple times he ran. There was a called quarterback run, which I liked. Keeping plays alive. But the biggest thing was when, a lot of times the offensive line wasn't getting the job done. He'd have to move to avoid a sack, keep his eyes downfield, maybe move again. Sometimes he was on the run. But the one to Carnell where Carnell got his head about knocked off, Julian did a great job just moving in the pocket, keeping it, and then bam, threw an absolute dime. But then Carnell, there's 2 guys right there. He put it where only Carnell can get it, but then those guys are just taking shots at his head. Really, it should have been like illegal contact to the, legal hands to the face by the DB as well, but it didn't matter. Carnell goes up, bam, catches it, high points it, back of the end zone, gets smacked in the head, helmet flies off like it didn't faze him at all. So a perfect pass and a perfect catch. Carnell Tate is just amazing. Calling him the best number 2 receiver in the country almost doesn't do it justice, right? Because he'd be like wasn't for Jeremiah Smith, he definitely would be in the running, and he still is. Maybe we'll have 2 like Biletnikoff finalists. He would again, he is in the running right now, but if it wasn't for Jeremiah Smith, we might be talking about Carnell Tate as like the front runner for the Biletnikoff, because you have to think his stats would be even better, right? But they do have Jeremiah Smith and they do have Carnell Tate. It's just awesome. It's awesome. What Julian Sand's doing, I never thought I'd see a more accurate passer at Ohio State than Dwayne Haskins. Then I never thought I'd see a more accurate passer at Ohio State than C.J. Stroud. Julian's more accurate than both of them. He's now averaging his completion percentage is now 80 on the season. 80%. He was 85% this past game, 36 of 42. And he's had some drops. So it's like almost misleadingly low that his completion percentage is only 80%. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. This kid, I'm glad he's like fully in the Heisman mix because he should be. He should be in the Heisman mix. Mendoza should be. And I'm surprised Simpson is. I didn't think Ty Simpson was going to be very good this year. He started off kind of shaky, a lot shaky against Florida State. But, he deserves it as well. I'm surprised he's there, but he deserves it. But those are the 3 guys right now. You also have Texas A&M's quarterback, but he's like kind of leading tier 2. He's back there. He's got like 9-1 odds. So you got those 3 guys, like I mentioned, that are just bunched up at the top as far as the betting odds with Mendoza, Simpson, and our guy Julian Sand, the surgeon. All right, you guys ready for some power rankings? All right, tell me. Okay, we're gonna go through this. I'm gonna have this on the ticker. You guys tell me where I'm right, where I'm wrong. I think you guys are gonna agree with number 1 and 2 and 3. All right, here we go. All right. My personal power rankings, here we go. 1 through 18 for the large 10, the large 18. Here we go. Big 10 power rankings. Number 1, Ohio State, obviously, still basking. Number 2, Indiana. Number 3, Oregon. Number 4, that team up north. Number 5, Illinois. Number 6, USC. Number 7, Iowa. Number 8, Washington. Number 9, Minnesota. Number 10, Nebraska. Number 11, Northwestern. Number 12, Maryland. Number 13, Penn State. Who would have thought that? And Michigan State, UCLA, Rutgers, Wisconsin, and Purdue. You look at that against Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon. Then we have the Wolverines, Fighting Illini, Trojans, Hawkeyes. We got Washington, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Maryland. Thought about putting Maryland above Northwestern, but Northwestern's Penn State being 13th is crazy. You could argue I have them too high. Michigan State, UCLA, Rutgers, and Purdue. And how about that? Ohio State, coming into the year, it looked like Ohio State had a really tough schedule. And it's not Ohio State's fault. Like they on paper, they had a really tough schedule, right? But they don't play Indiana and Oregon. They will go play at Michigan, of course. They played Illinois. They missed USC, Iowa. They played at Washington, of course. Played Minnesota, beat the crap out of Minnesota. But look at the back of the list here. They're going to play Penn State. I have them like 13th. They're going to play 15 UCLA, 16 Rutgers. They played 17 Wisconsin, and they're going to play 18 Purdue. So they're playing pretty much all the worst teams in the Big Ten, missing 2 and 3. And then you look at Texas. Texas was the number 1 team in the nation here when they came to the Horseshoe. Ohio State was 2 in one of the polls and 3 in the other. That was the last time Texas was number 1. They had to survive in overtime against Kentucky, or they would have been officially eliminated from the playoffs. They pretty much already are. If they win out, they'll get in, but they have to win out. So Texas isn't nearly as good as anybody thought. Ohio State's Big Ten schedule is not nearly as good as anybody thought. So what do you guys think? Where'd I miss at? Where'd I miss? So you look at around the country. It does feel like, speaking of tiers, let's look around the country. You guys can talk about the Big Ten Power Rankings. Let's look around the country right now. Talk about tiers. So I think Ohio State's in a tier by itself. All respect to Indiana, and I love that what they did, giving Cignetti the extension. Good. I mean, my God, what he's done at Indiana. They're going to name the stadium like Cignetti Stadium when they build a new stadium one day. It's crazy what he's done at Indiana. And I do feel like Indiana is a tier down. I feel like you have Ohio State in a tier by itself. You could argue Indiana and Oregon are in tier 1. I get it. It's kind of semantics. But I kind of go, there's Ohio State's tier 1, then tier 2 is 2 teams, Oregon and Indiana and Oregon in that order. Then you got that tier 3 with Michigan leading it. But then Illinois, USC's right there. I thought, I thought there was, and I know that USC beat Michigan. I realize that, but like still, you can't just look at one game. I mean, you can't just look at one game. This is why I have UCLA 15th and not a little higher than that. But I think Michigan is in that tier 3, leading that tier 3. So but that's going to be that game, because they can play defense. They're one-dimensional on offense, but if Justice Haynes for Michigan, if he's healthy by then, it's a little bit of a concern, because Ohio State has to be able to run the ball in that game consistently, and they have to plan for it to be nasty weather. That's going to be the equalizer. Ohio State's definitely more talented than Michigan. As good as Michigan's defense is, Ohio State's defense is much better than Michigan's. Ohio State has the best defense in the country, but they have to run the ball in that game, because then you can't let it be where Michigan wins the turnover battle and they win that game. Am I looking way ahead? You're damn right I am. I've had that circled in Sharpie. I know you guys have too, the entire year, November 29th. So, we'll see what happens, but they have to go up there thinking that it's going to be nasty. But let's look around the countries. You have, like I said, in the Big Ten, you have those tiers. I think in the country, it's kind of the same way how I look at it. You have Ohio State in its own tier, and then you have, in my opinion, you have Indiana, Oregon, Alabama. Should we put Texas? Yeah, I'll put Texas A&M in there for now. Texas A&M, Georgia. I'm going to leave Miami out for now at a tier. I guess you could technically put them in there at the back. Miami, they'll probably get in the playoff, but man, 11 and a half point favorites at home against Louisville. And Louisville looked like they didn't just win by trick plays. Louisville looked like the more physical team. And that was one thing about this Miami team that was standing out. It was like they're physical on the offensive and defensive lines. Well, Louisville got the best of them. So I think you're looking at tiers, as far as nationally too. That's why Ohio State is the clear betting favorite to win the national championship right now. So you're looking at tier 1, Ohio State, tier 2, like I said, in my opinion, Indiana, Oregon, and then some of those SEC schools, with obviously with Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M right there. I think we're headed for a situation where the Big Ten's only going to get 3 teams in the playoff. And hear me out. You should be happy if you're a Buckeye fan that only 3 teams are going to get in, because there is a path for 4 teams to get in, but that would entail a certain team up north winning the rest of the regular season games, because 11-1 Ohio State would get in, but then 10-2 Michigan would get in. So that's the one way that the Big Ten could get 4 teams in. It's possible there's another way, but that's really the only other way. It feels like Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon are locks, obviously. And I think everybody else is going to get left out, because I do think Ohio State's going to take care of business against Michigan. 9-3 Michigan's not getting in. I don't think a 3-loss Big Ten team is getting in this year. So I think it's going to be 3 teams from the Big Ten, but it's going to be 3 teams that are highly ranked. 3 of the top seeds will come from the Big Ten for sure. And we might have a situation with the rule changes this year because they, the way they did the seeding last year was so ridiculous. It took all of 1 year and we were saying last year it was ridiculous, but they still went through with it and took them all of 1 year to realize how ridiculous it was. We could have a situation. This seems very likely to me that we're going to have 12-0 Ohio State versus 12-0 Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. And even the loser of that game will get a bye, which I believe is the case now. I lose track of the rules sometimes, but I think it's not based on, you have to win your conference championship to get a bye. It's like, no, it's the top 4 teams, period. If they enter that game 1-2, which they will if they both win out, they're 1-2 right now. Yes, we're living in a world where Ohio State and Indiana are ranked 1-2. One of those things does not surprise us. One of those things shocks us. Ohio State number 1, Indiana number 2 in football. And if they enter the game, which they would, ranked number 1 and number 2, 12-0, the loser of that game is not dropping probably not further than 3rd. Really, if it's a close game, the loser might have an argument they shouldn't drop at all. If you're Indiana, let's say you lose a game against number 1 Ohio State by a touchdown, and you're number 2, should you really drop? They probably would, but they wouldn't drop any further than 3rd. Certainly wouldn't drop any further than 4th. So even the loser of that game would get a bye in the CFP if it plays out that way. All right. So, man, Matt Patricia. I'm 22 minutes almost into this show before mentioning Matt Patricia. Unbelievable what he's doing. The only thing that concerns me about Matt Patricia is he's so damn good. I think he's going to be one and done. I think someone's going to give him a big bag of money to go to the NFL as a DC. I'm not worried about losing him as a head coach to a head coach somewhere because I think some people just still don't get it, even what he's doing at Ohio State right now. They look at what he did, when he was the head coach of the Lions, erases his 19 years with the Patriots when he helped them win 3 Super Bowls, including 6 years when he was defensive coordinator of the Patriots. And but people just get certain things in their minds, and he still has that reputation because he didn't do well with the Lions. Well, the Lions' current coach, Dan Campbell, is the only one that's done anything with the Lions for decades upon decades. So there is that. There's also, as I love to point out, a long list of great college head coaches who failed as NFL head coaches. And Matt Patricia is not a college head coach. He's a defensive coordinator, which was hilarious why everybody was in the media, and even some local media. They were going out of their way to criticize the Matt Patricia hire as defensive coordinator at Ohio State, and they would cite the Lions head coaching situation, almost just glossing over his years with the Patriots. So I'm like, okay, so does Urban Meyer's failed tenure with the Jaguars mean he was a bad college head coach? No. What about Urban Meyer, or what about Nick Saban with the Dolphins? What about Steve Spurrier with the then Washington Redskins? Does that mean Steve Spurrier was a bad college head coach? Of course not. So it was a ridiculous argument, but Matt Patricia has just been a godsend. And they're ready to run Jim Knowles out of town already. They already ran James Franklin out of town. They're ready to run Jim Knowles out of town. I was reading a story this week talking about how Jim Knowles is doing an awful. This is it was definitely from a Penn State, a slanted viewpoint. Somebody who was definitely a Penn State fan was writing this story, but they were just like, this is terrible. And Ohio State basically warned us it was going to take till year 3. You can't have year 3 of the guy making $3 million in this roster. It's funny. It's funny as heck to read about it. And Jim Knowles jumped ship. Thank goodness he did. And I liked Knowles. I thought he was good, but he's no Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia is just absolutely fantastic. And you see the way the players love him. The players don't like playing for him. They love him. You can just see the way. And I know all the stories, too, from talking to players and talking to parents. We've had Dee Sanchez talk about it on the podcast. Not that she was a guest, but in the chat. Just how the guys love playing for Matt Patricia. That's important. When you will run through a wall for your coach, that is important. And it's not just, oh, he's a nice guy. He's bringing cookies to the meetings and stuff like that. It's like, no. He's demanding a lot out of these guys. It's the perfect mix. He's very demanding, but they know he loves them. It's a lot. He's taking a page out of Ryan Day's book. Ryan Day is demanding of his guys, but they know he loves them. They know he cares about their mental health, things that football players really couldn't talk about till somewhat recently. And there's still kind of the stigma out there. There shouldn't be. Ryan Day's removed that from Ohio State. He's got sports psychologists all over the place in there. I love that. Taking the stigma away, knowing it's okay to talk about if you're having some mental health issues. Okay. Go out on the football field and kick butt. And then when we're off the football field, we'll get your mind straightened out as much as possible. Feel free to talk about it. There's nothing wrong with it. I love that about Ryan Day. And it feels like I know Matt Patricia loves working with Ryan Day. So I say I'm worried Matt Patricia won't be back next year. It's going to take a lot of money because he's already a rich man. He loves being here. His family loves being here. He doesn't like working for Ryan Day. He loves it, just like the players don't like playing for Matt Patricia. They love it. So what a godsend he's been. So it's been so much fun. All right, my friends, I'm going to close up shop here. I appreciate you guys joining me on this solo venture. Dan Rubin will be with you tomorrow, and I'll be with Dan on Wednesday's show. A little midweek Rubes for you. So we'll have back-to-back days. We always have back-to-back days of Dan Rubin. It's usually Monday, Tuesday. Now it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday. So look forward to that. And thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate everybody who's watching the show live. Thanks to everybody who's listening to the podcast version on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. We appreciate you guys very much. I know you guys are still basking. Go Bucks.